Welcome to CUNY Online Unscripted, where we explore the future of online education at CUNY and beyond. Today's episode is Instructional Media 101, an overview of the methods used to create engaging videos for online courses. I'm Jon Fernandez, a multimedia specialist at CUNY Online, and I am this episode's host. I'm excited to welcome Patrick Thompson, my fellow multimedia design specialist at CUNY Online. Patrick is an expert of media for online education and has experience creating high quality and engaging course content with CUNY Online. Welcome to our show, Patrick.
Thanks, John. Really happy to be here.
Great, and we'll just go ahead and jump straight into it by providing context and just kind of giving a really brief overview of what does a multimedia specialist do at CUNY Online?
Yeah, so for context, at CUNY Online, as a multimedia specialist, we both get to work with faculty at campuses to develop media for specific online courses after a given campus and department has submitted an RFP to our department and then been approved for that collaborative process with us. So a lot of our work is working directly one-on-one with faculty to identify where media is useful in a course, and then building out the media production workflows together, such as writing scripts for videos to prepare the content and allow the delivery of the content to be succinct and concise, and then recording with faculty, editing those recordings with their input, and finally, delivering videos, primarily videos that get used in the online courses. We also can support with infographics and other types of media. However, video is definitely the predominant workflow that we focus on. And then in addition to those targeted one-on-one collaborative workflows with faculty, we're also building out best practices that can be shared across CUNY, even beyond the courses that we're developing directly with one professor or just one campus. So we're in the near future, we're going to be launching a community of practice, which is like an online forum where we can meet, and all CUNY faculty and staff are invited to participate and join. And that's going to be a great opportunity to share best practices that could be applicable across campuses and courses, even in cases where perhaps a multimedia professional like the two of us isn't always available to get involved one-on-one with every course. So we're building out best practices that can also be replicated by instructors using their own tools and equipment, which we'll probably get into a little bit more later in this conversation as well.
Yeah, no, that all sounds really great. And it really seems that even though, we are multimedia specialists and we do work with a variety of media, it does seem like video is the foundation of, good course content. And a lot of the work that we do really does focus on video. So my next question is, what role does video play in online courses?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think the broadest and most direct answer is it can play many different roles, but primarily some of the priority objectives that we try to achieve with video and online courses is, first of all, just instructor presence. So a student taking an online course might not be interacting with other peers or the instructor directly while taking an online course. So having a video of an instructor just allows a student to connect to another human on the other side of the screen, and that's very valuable. Research shows that improves the learning experience. In addition, just using video to teach topics that require visuals is incredibly powerful. So we'll get into some examples later in the conversation, but for instance, if a professor needs to provide like a demonstration of how to use particular software or like step-by-step demonstrations, obviously video can be really useful for that, so that they can also narrate the steps or the topics that need to be presented. And also just video is a great way to increase engagement for online learning as well. Faculty don't have to only limit themselves to videos that they're creating, but they could also explore and see if there are existing videos online that really teach a certain topic well, or convey the information that they need. There are opportunities to embed those videos and rely on those, which can also create some variety in the course, which can be great, as long as we're citing those sources and sticking to fair use, standards with that. And I think just in general, for online learning, the videos can be a great way to sort of create an experience for the students. So if there's a video that was recorded on location somewhere, if I imagine that I'm a student, I would love to watch something like that, and I'm kind of going to a location, I'm going somewhere. It's kind of like an experience that I get to have as part of the learning. So we really try to use the videos to create an active learning experience that way. And, rather than just sort of a passive learning experience where the students just sitting there in isolation that way.
Yeah, no, that all sounds really great. And I think that's really valuable insights in terms of, what's the purpose of video in an online course. And so, the next question I want to add that kind of goes off of that is what are some tips for using video effectively in an online course? And these are, tips that you can get faculty that not only that we work with, but, faculty who may be watching this, who don't work with us, what are some tips you can give them to, help them build good videos?
Yeah, this is a really important question. One sort of founding source that we rely on to help inform our approach is Mayer's 12 Principles for Designing Multimedia. So we try to use research that supports best practices with what's going to provide students with the best learning experience. So one of the 12 principles from Mayer that really stands out to me is to reduce extraneous processing. And this is articulated in that coherence principle, where people learn more deeply from multimedia when extraneous material is excluded rather than included. So, I guess to put that in my own words as a recommendation for creating effective videos, I would say less is more. And being intentional when choosing when you're going to create videos and why is really important. I think it's important to keep in mind that teaching practices that worked in an in-person setting won't necessarily work seamlessly in an online course. So I think it's valuable to pull from what does work in person, but it most likely needs to be translated in some ways in order for it to be effective in an online course, especially when it comes to video. So going back to Mayer's 12 principles, I think, keeping, for instance, keeping the amount of text that may be included on screen. Let's say it's a video recording of a short lecture with PowerPoint slide deck, with a PowerPoint slide deck used in the recording. That's a great type of video to make, and I think it's useful in a lot of courses. However, my biggest recommendation would be to keep the length of the video short. Sometimes these recordings could end up being, way too long, like an hour long or more. And so that's just going to overload the student with so much information, which may cover lots of different topics in one recording. So a more effective approach could be to be selective about which topics is one video going to cover, and maybe even trying to make each video focused on a specific topic. And then you could, in an online course, you could follow up that video with a quiz or some type of activity to activate the students' learning. And that's been shown to be really effective. And I believe it's fair to say that students enjoy learning that way. I think it makes the learning experience more interesting and more engaging. Aside from, reducing the amount of text and keeping the videos short, I would also recommend being selective about choosing topics that require visuals in order to teach them. And that would be a good example of a time when using video would be really effective, right? Like we mentioned before, even if an instructor goes on location somewhere that's relevant to the module or the topic, and even using their smartphone, for instance, to capture some footage of maybe a professional in the field, or just moments that help to demonstrate and demystify the topic for a student. I think those can be really powerful ways to bring those topics to life in the course, and to just give the student more of an experience. Again, back to the active learning, trying to bring these learning experiences to life, and help the students to feel connected to each other. I think that's another really important use of video in a course, is to give the students opportunities to either engage with each other, or maybe watch a video and then they have a discussion about it. But video can be just a great way to provide that sort of, like we said before, the instructor presence, but also an opportunity to connect among peers in a class as well.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And, I'm glad you bring up Mayor's 12 principles, because it's almost like if I could give every instructor who's thinking about using video in their course, if I could just give them Mayor's 12 principles as like a rubric to use to like make sure the videos that they are putting in their courses are, kind of following these like principles. It's like a really good tool for faculty and instructors to use. So I'll definitely be sure to have that linked in the description below in our show notes if you're watching on YouTube. And that kind of leads into the next question, where you kind of mentioned some good examples of media. Is what are some examples of instructional media that have been effective in online courses that you've have worked on?
I think I would start by saying again, which I mentioned earlier, is that keeping videos short is really important in order to make them effective in an online course. So ideally, videos should be no longer than maybe 5 or 6 minutes each, although we know that there are exceptions, and there are times where there is a legitimate reason why a video might need to be longer than 5 or 6 minutes. So in those cases, maybe a video's 20 minutes at the longest. But again, the examples I'm going to point to, since I can't share them here on the screen, but we could include links in the description as well. These videos were all kept to 10 minutes or less, and that just, I think, allows the content to be a lot more engaging and useful for students. One specific example that comes to mind is an astrobiology course that we worked on at LaGuardia. And we were creating an online course that students would take fully online, and there were some lab components of this course when it's taught in person. So in order to provide online students an opportunity to at least just see that lab, we got to work with the campus, and we went and we filmed that lab in person with students there. That way, online students who take the course could at least see the lab, see how it unfolds, what's involved, what equipment was used, and even just seeing the experience that students had while taking that lab, I think, is informative to an online student to get a sense of what they're gaining from this experience. I will note that we made sure to get media release forms from all the students that we filmed with. So if anyone replicates that approach, just to be mindful of working with your campus to make sure that you get consent from anyone that might appear in your recordings. But we have spoken with the professor who we worked on, who's now teaching that course online. And we've heard that the students taking that online course have reacted really positively to that lab video, for instance. Because as you can imagine, if they were just maybe reading a description of the lab, they wouldn't get nearly as much value as being able to actually watch it happen. Another example that came to mind was a nutrition course that we built with York College, and this was another online course. And we found an opportunity in that course to invite a subject matter expert from outside of CUNY to participate with us in a short interview that we recorded over Zoom. So the professor, scheduled a Zoom meeting with a nutritionist who's really well known in the field, and then they got to record an interview over Zoom together, and we worked to edit that down and include that in the course. So students taking that course got to gain some insights from somebody who's actually working in that field, which I think is just great for them to see. And again, to kind of demystify, who are the professionals who work in this field, and sort of what types of lives do they lead, or what kind of work are they doing? So that was a really valuable use of video in that one. And maybe one more example that comes to mind that I'll share is we also worked on a nuclear medicine course, and throughout that course, we made a number of different videos. One in particular, we were demonstrating the principles of radioactive decay. And so, like, that topic would just be hard to describe and illustrate using only words or text. So the video components where, being able to actually like capture that happening on video while the professor also narrates the stages of that taking place was like another great example of where, that's a topic where you kind of need visuals to teach that. And, obviously for an online course, just a great way to do that is to bring the video component into the picture.
Yeah, no, it's great. And that final example we share, the nuclear medicine one, putting my bias aside since I was the one that worked on that video, I do think it turned out really great. Almost even more so better than it would have been showing that in person. Because of movie magic, we were able to kind of speed up the process of this radioactive decay and show it visually with different like multimedia and like graphic elements that were shown on screen, where, if there was an instructor who was trying to demonstrate this topic, you would almost show that video as sort of like a pre-learning video to doing the actual activity in person in like an in-person class. So I think that like video is a really good example. And also to add to it, that video came about because the instructional designer who was working with the faculty on that course asked the faculty, what is a topic that is, important to the course that students have, difficulty understanding sometimes, that would also lend itself well to video because it is visual. And I think those like guiding questions to kind of figure out what's going to be a good video for your course are really important. So I applaud the instructional designer who also asked those questions. And I'll go ahead and move into our next question, which is what tools are available to faculty and staff at CUNY for recording and editing video content?
Yeah, this one I'm excited to get into because, honestly, the answer is there are almost so many tools out there that it can sometimes be overwhelming, especially now with just technology advancing so rapidly. And there are so many tools to choose from that exist out there. So, just with that in mind, I'm going to try to focus on a pretty small list of options here that are available through CUNY to try to recommend, working with the toolkit that's sort of provided in-house by CUNY. One that comes to mind first is Camtasia. And I know from working with campuses that there are a lot of instructors out there who are already using Camtasia and who are familiar with it and who are doing a great job at using it to create videos for their courses. And I find sometimes that there are other faculty who don't even know about it. So if it's something that any listeners haven't tried, you can download it by contacting your campus's IT department, and you will need their support to access a software key to download it for your computer. But once you go through that process, that might take like a week or two because there are a couple steps involved. Once you have the program, it's great for recording video content on your laptop. And it also includes like screen capture capabilities. So you could record yourself talking while also simultaneously recording like a slide deck or images on your computer screen that you want to share. You can even like play videos in the recording and have yourself talking about them. So you could be breaking down a video and kind of narrating what's happening in a video. And then the Camtasia also, in addition to providing the capability to record, users can also edit their video recordings right in the app. It's an intuitive interface that Actually has a lot of features that you can explore. You can go pretty far with it, but one thing I like about it is that it's also pretty user friendly. So if you have limited time, you can open it up, and within a pretty short amount of time, you can be using it and get the hang of it. It includes some tutorials like that are built into the app as well that can be useful. That one I think would probably be my first recommendation. And in addition to that, there are Adobe tools that are available across CUNY as well. These are rolling out now in the it's been a pretty recent development for some of these tools to be provided across all CUNY campuses. So listeners might want to check with their campus IT department about that as well, just to confirm like the best way to access these Adobe tools. But one in particular is called Adobe Podcast. It's cool because you don't, with Adobe Podcast, you don't have to download software. You don't have to download an app to your computer. It's just a URL. And when you visit the URL on your computer, you have access to the tool right there. It's still, Adobe Podcast is still in beta. So some of the features I think are still being kind of developed by Adobe, but one particular usage that I want to encourage listeners to try out is Adobe Podcast has really effective vocal enhancement capabilities, and it can also remove background noise from audio recordings. So if you have a pre-existing, video recording or audio recording that you made previously, sometimes there's just background noise in the recording, and it makes the quality of the recording poor. It might be distracting if students are trying to listen to a recording and there's either background noise or the quality of the recording is low. So by simply dragging and dropping that file into Adobe Podcast, it's as easy as a click and drag type of step on your computer. The software will just apply these two features to enhance the quality of the vocal, like recording, like the voiceover, and also to just remove background noise. So that's a powerful tool that is easy to use, and it really can help make the just the listening or viewing experience better for students on the other end. And in addition, there's another Adobe tool called Adobe Express. Again, that one also is a website, so you don't have to download software for that one. And in Adobe Express, you can also record video content. It has a very intuitive video editor built into the interface, so you could trim your recording and kind of clean it up. And I mention Express because it's also good for creating things like infographics and some other types of media. So Express might require a little bit more time to get used to the interface, but there's quite a bit that users can do in there. I would sort of caution that using the Adobe tools, everything that users create using those tools will be stored by Adobe on their cloud storage interface. I believe that's currently the configuration. So my advice would be not to rely solely on that cloud storage. So if you've put a lot of time into creating things in there, you also have the opportunity to download what you've created and just like store a copy yourself. And so whenever I use those tools, I just make sure to download what I'm creating as I go, because there's the chance of losing access to it if something changes regarding the cloud storage access.
Yeah, those are all fantastic tools. And I got to say, as someone who's been working as a video production professional and a video editor now for like close to a decade pretty much, I used to spend hours at a time trying to enhance audio and different editing software, and just going through all these different tools and plugins to create like this really crisp sounding audio. And it's incredible that now we're at a point where all I have to do is drag and drop a file into this Adobe Podcast program, and it does all the work for me in like 30 seconds. And it's just absolutely incredible. Great. Yeah. And another question I have is, for faculty and instructors who maybe aren't working with us here at CUNY Online and don't have access to, videographers or, video producers to make these like really high quality movie-like, productions. Are there any tips you can give them to sort of recording content on their own and, making videos on their own?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think it applies to lots of faculty across CUNY. And yeah, my answer is that they can do quite a bit on their own, even without a professional videographer, or even if they don't have a direct workflow and a direct collaboration with CUNY Online. Faculty can get creative and use their smartphones, for instance, to record video footage that would replicate the types of video use cases that we are describing in the examples earlier in the conversation. So, if a professor wanted to capture, a demonstration in a science lab setting, they might even be able to ask a colleague to help and have someone, record on the smartphone while they're doing a demonstration. Or, for instance, I know at Bronx Community College, I was talking to a professor there who was in touch with the automotive department, and we were having a conversation about the need for the automotive training courses to include some video components where even when students are in person, there might be 20 or 30 students in a course. And if they're all huddled around a car, not everybody might be able to see that specific part in the engine that the instructor needs to demonstrate and show everyone. So even in some cases in an in-person class, using video creatively, again, in that case with the automotive course, the instructor could certainly use their smartphone, maybe like record some close-up shots of that part of the engine. And then we mentioned Camtasia earlier, instructors could capture those types of recording using a smartphone or even the web camera on the laptop or on a computer. And then you could easily put those recordings into Camtasia, which then would allow you to annotate your recording, trim it down and clean it up, cut out the beginning part where you're setting up the camera and so forth. Add some annotations like some text on the screen or like an arrow that's pointing to the specific thing that you need people to look at. So those are just a few examples of ways that instructors could get creative and even on their own. Another example that comes to mind is using Zoom to interview a subject matter expert on a relevant topic. That's certainly something that instructors could do without any support, from CUNY Online or anything like that. I think just keeping in mind, again, like I mentioned, using Camtasia to be able to clean up the footage that you capture will really go a long way. Beyond that, the sky's the limit. I think there are a lot of ways to put these strategies into practice.
Yeah, those are really great practical tips. And one more thing I'll add too is check in with your campus and see what resources they might have available for you to use. I know some campuses do have people, on campus who can help them with recordings. And that's not something that every campus does have. But, from the top of my head, I know Baruch does have a multimedia studio. I know York College does have a studio as well. York College. And a couple of others. So definitely just check in and see what your campus has to offer and how they can support you with multimedia needs. That's going to mark the end of the episode. Thank you, Patrick, so much for sharing your insights today. I am sure we'll have more multimedia episodes in the future on this podcast. And thank you for your contribution to enhancing learning at CUNY, or online learning specifically at CUNY.
Thanks, John. Yeah, it's been great to be here, and looking forward to seeing future episodes and where things go from here.